With love as our guide, we covenant to welcome the stranger, encourage one another, to honor diversity, and ask questions lovingly. With love as our guide, we covenant to seek comprehension. Together we listen, trusting in you and me when our hearts beat differently. With love as our guide, we covenant to keep faith and remain as we begin again. As we light our chalice fire, to this we aspire. As we light our chalice fire, to this we aspire.
Good morning and welcome to Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Welcome to those of you who are physically present in our beautiful sanctuary, and welcome to those of you who are attending remotely. Welcome to the mothers, stepmothers, mothers-in-law, fathers who have played the role of mothers, and mothers of pets whom we celebrate today. Wherever you are, whoever you are welcome here. We are better and we are stronger because you are here with us. I'm Deborah Roberts, a pastoral associate here at MVUU. This congregation is served for a few more weeks anyway by our wonderful interim minister, the Reverend Dr. Samantha Wilson, mother of the undeniably cute and rapidly growing Joy. I know, yeah. I know that Reverend Sam is very much looking forward to spending more time mothering when she leaves behind the demands of full-time congregational ministry. And sadly, we must begin to prepare for her departure in June. This morning, we also want to celebrate and acknowledge our new Contigo guests, Kesnel, who's sitting over here, bienvenidos. And baby Kerwins, who is in the nursery. The last 3 weeks in the life of MVUU, whoa, it's been a ride, have been filled with celebration, excitement, and yes, turmoil. And I know that more than a few of us, myself included, are exhausted from all that has happened, both mentally and physically. 2 weeks from today is our annual congregational meeting where we will be voting on the budget, which involves further discussion and decisions about our future. And to give you a sneak peek, there is some good news there. In this in-between time, and especially today, we hope to lead you into a place and into the spirit of stillness, of quiet contemplation and reflection. We are, however, going to tackle a couple of weighty topics. We are going to consider the complicated relationships associated with motherhood, both as children of our mothers and in our own roles as mothers. And is it just coincidence that the leak from the Supreme Court about the draft brief that would abolish legal abortion and a woman's right to choose happened in this week leading up to Mother's Day? During Reverend Samantha's homily near the end of our service, she will be sharing a reflection about our Unitarian Universalist history of reproductive justice. This will include reflections on abortion. We know these topics are tender for each of us in different ways. We encourage you to do what is best for you. She and we support you in tuning her out, tuning her in, staying seated, moving around the room, or stepping out of the room if you need to, especially those of you who are joining us from home. If you notice a strong reaction to our topic today, know there is pastoral care and community beyond this hour for listening and support. Reverend Samantha is also available to meet one-to-one this week. You are not alone. We'll also, one other topic, and we'll be doing some porch sitting with a praying mantis. So, as we light our chalice today, please sit back, relax, take a few deep breaths, and open your minds to a quiet and thoughtful consideration of our words and ideas.
Behold my face. Thank you. Guys, later. Good morning. My name is Robin Bausell. I am also a pastoral associate here at MVUU. This morning, for our chalice lighting, I would like to share with you a piece called There Is a Time to Let Go by the Reverend Gretchen Haley. There is a time to let go of the resistance, the steadfast march, to complete the to-do list for parents and activists and for all who love this life, these people, these mountains, this sky. There's a time to rest and to trust the world will go on, filled with partners at the ready, all of us splitting shifts on this project of building and healing, tending and turning. Breath and being require their own practice, their own attention. And the heart needs time for becoming stronger after the shattering, the opening wider, the learning to love more and again. Come into this place. Study stillness and joy. Know your belovedness like a memory calling out from the center of your being, connecting every little piece of everything to everyone and all of us. Feel here gratitude rising and praise for this chance to begin again this day with hope. Come, let us worship together.
Mothers and motherhood. Topics that are fraught with emotion, oftentimes with conflicting emotions, fond memories and joy, anger and hard feelings, unresolved issues, perhaps sadness or even relief for those of us whose mothers have passed on. It's likely that we experience many of these emotions when we think of our mothers, stepmothers, mothers-in-law, or our own roles as mothers. Sitting here on this bench reminds me of the time I spent with my mother close to the end of her life. She died just short of her 95th birthday. She had a small apartment in a very nice assisted living facility in Concord, Massachusetts, along the banks of the Assabet River. I visited every week from Cape Cod and usually brought my dog along because she really enjoyed him and the affection that he showed her. We would often sit outside on a bench where we could hear the water flowing, play with the dog, and talk about inconsequential things. For I never really had the kind of relationship I would have liked to have with my mother. Although we spent a fair amount of time together, and I was very involved with her care at the end of her life, I would say that we were never really close. I wonder if she would say the same thing. We never talked about the big things in life, mostly because she was unwilling to do so. My repeated attempts to engage her were never very successful. She usually just changed the subject. She was a very unemotional person and didn't like to talk about feelings. I always knew that she loved me. After all, she showed up at all my events and worked hard at the little things that demonstrated her love. But she never said, "I love you." And physical demonstrations of affection were always initiated by me. I remember that when I received a national award for my contributions to foreign language education, her comment was, "Your father would have been proud of you." I longed to have deeper conversations with her, to talk about the things that were on my mind and the existential questions of life. Nevertheless, my childhood memories are mostly positive. I'm wondering if some of you had similar experiences, or perhaps even more problematic relationships. My heart rejoices for those of you who experienced unconditional love from your parents, like my partner Tom. And what about your own roles as mothers? I am not a mother, unless you count my dog and the fact that Tom's kids now refer to me as stepmom. Do they not encompass a range of emotions too, especially for those of you whose children are grown? I'm sure that most of you are very proud of your children and their accomplishments. But some of you might be disappointed and even estranged. Some of you have close relationships, while others are more distant. Some of you talk or text every day, while others exchange phone calls or Zoom on holidays. Some of you have moved here or to other locations to be closer to your kids, and some seldom get together. And when you do, the atmosphere is charged with things unsaid. My words today seek to acknowledge the fact that mother-child relationships are complicated, and our experiences with our own mothers and as mothers vary widely. May we be accepting of these differences and hold them all in our hearts. Now we progress to a moment of stillness. In this place of shared stillness, let us lift up all the different kinds of relationships to mothers and mothering that might be in this room. This moment of stillness is adapted from two pieces written by Amy Young and Maureen Killeran. I will name these different kinds of relationships, and after each one, we'll hold a place of stillness and silence. You might identify with these. You might love someone who identifies with these. Let us hold each with tenderness together. To those who gave birth this year to their first child, we celebrate with you. To those who lost a child this year, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stains, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through miscarriage, failed adoptions, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes, prods, tears, and disappointment, we walk with you. Forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make this harder than it is. To those who are foster moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm and close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have heartache, disappointment, and distance with your children, we grieve with you. To those who lost their mothers this year, we feel that loss with you. To those who experience abuse at the hands of your own mother, we honor you. To those who never knew their mothers, and all who chose or were compelled to let their children drift away, we bless you. To all who long to hold their newborn in the arms of love, and all who faced a pregnancy with fear, we sit with you. To all who struggle with the pain of their mother's increasing confusion, and all who feel the muddle growing in their own heads and seek to keep it from their parent or their child, you are not alone. To all whose mothers never grew up, and all whose mothers never learned to play, we are with you. To all who missed the chance to say, I love you, and all who long to say it now, but find ourselves afraid, we hear you. To all of those who have chosen an abortion, we support you. To all those who are single and long to be married and mothering your own children, we mourn that life has not turned out the way you longed for it to be. To all those who step-parent, we walk with you on these complex paths. To all who envision lavishing love on grandchildren, yet that dream is not to be, we grieve with you. To all those who will have emptier nests in the upcoming year, we grieve and rejoice with you. To all those who place children up for adoption, we commend you and remember how you hold that child in your heart. And to all those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. For all those experiences of mothers and mothering, said and unsaid, we say, we are with you. We see you. We honor you. May this stillness nurture and hold us all.
I wasn't always kind to my mother. We had some rough years while I was growing up, but after the lessons learned in losing my brother and my father, I realized it was important to me to build a better relationship with my mother. And by the time she died, we had found our way to being incredibly close. Her passing left me with a deep well of grief that I continued to work through. In the same year that I lost her, a show I'd been working on for 2 years came to an abrupt close. I got booted from the home that my best friend and I built together for 6 years, and then my mother got suddenly sick, and in the midst of trying to sort out a new living situation and the fresh wound of losing my mother, I lost my job. With everything I had come to depend on crashing down around me, I was lost, hurt, grieving, whiplashed, completely devastated. The weight of all of it was so much, I almost gave up. But the universe intervened. I had just arrived back in Tucson, squatting in my mother's mobile home. She'd always had an Arizona room, or a sitting porch of some kind, and she liked to watch the desert and all the little unique creatures. And I found myself sitting on her porch the morning after my arrival, and there it was, a praying mantis, green and gorgeous and strange and still. We sat together for hours, neither of us really doing much. We'd both moved on by midday, but the next morning, she came back, and again, there we sat, waiting, breathing, quiet, still. On the third day, we continued our ritual, but in curiosity, I started doing some research on the symbolism of the praying mantis. Now, different cultures have variations of symbolism, but the common thread in all of them is stillness. The praying mantis represents the need to sit still, the opportunity to look for wisdom within, to put down the distractions of life and just be still in the storm. Some even believe the appearance of a praying mantis in one's life is a sign to answer a spiritual calling. That weekend, I found my way to MVUU. Sometimes inaction is an action, especially in the midst of chaos and storms, blow after blow, pain, disappointment, grief, or even when it's positive, change after change, celebrations, hellos, goodbyes, upheavals. Taking stock of where you're at, what you've been through, what you may go through soon, regaining your balance, finding your center, being unshakable in the storm. In this way, inaction is an action. Stillness becomes a spiritual and ritual act of self-care. In October of 2020, in the first wave of the pandemic and on the eve of a national election, we were also longing for clarity in the midst of uncertainty. Our Baja 4 hosted a ministerial intern, Riley Ulrich, who offered a somatic meditation and prayer on how to release our fears into the earth, inviting us to imagine the ways release leads to stillness, leads to transformation, leads to seeds, leads to nurturance. We bring Riley back today to guide us once more. Before we begin, notice. What fear or uncertainty do you hold this week in your life, in our community? In what ways have you wanted to be right about something in your life or our community? What grief have you been holding? What regret about what you should have or could have done? As we begin this season of goodbye with Reverend Samantha, what is left to do or say? What is yours to do in helping end this ministry with her truly and completely so that we can begin again, anew, in rich soil? Join me and Riley in meditation.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here with you today. We're going to continue with some breath work, and this morning we're going to focus on releasing and composting and letting what we release grow up and return to us as a form of prayer. So find yourself a comfortable spot. Feel your spine and your feet attaching, rooting into wherever you are. Let them rest in that place. And just starting with a big breath out. We're all carrying a lot right now. And so this is an opportunity to let go of some of that extra weight. When you exhale, you might want to shrug your shoulders a little bit or just rock and feel your neck move. What does it feel like to let go of knowing the answer or being right? Is there anything that you personally are avoiding or resisting that you want to just set down for a little while? Can you let go of thinking you know how things should turn out? Can you let go of wanting things to go back to how they were? For me, when I do this, I also face some of my fear. And some things, even if I try and let go of them and try and put them down, they're still with me. But in this moment, is there any way to make them less heavy and to give them to the earth to compost? And so just one more moment here to release anything else, any extra weight that you're carrying that you want to turn over to the earth, anything that's been on your mind or your heart. With one more big breath out. So when we release things, when we give them to the earth, we know that compost takes time. It takes time to break down. It takes time to transform. But that ultimately, what is given back to the earth will become nutrient again and will grow in a new form. Can you think of what soil smells like? Rich dirt, ready to be planted in. Can you think of how it feels in your hands? Picking it up, or maybe digging in it. And if we're making compost, it's easy to wonder, what seeds are we nourishing? One of the powerful things about being human is that we are constantly casting off seeds. Our dreams, our intentions, our hopes, our connections with each other. All of these are seeds. And as we plant them, moving through the world, we release them to be nourished, not knowing what they will become. The process of giving nourishment to the seeds is just as important as dreaming. So letting things go and letting them become what they will be. The prayer for today turns inward, that we might each learn to let go of what no longer serves us, that it might compost and transform into the nourishment that will feed our dreams and hopes as we grow together.
know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know this fear will. I know this fear will. I know my fear will. I know this fear will. I know this fear will. I know this soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will. I know this rose will. I know my fears. I know my fear. I know my fears. I know my fears. I know this fear will. I know this rose will. I know this soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
I want to tell you about a secret underground interfaith network that existed in 1963 in New York, back when abortions were illegal. There was a UCC minister that started it and had told the New York Times that they had a group of 21 Protestant and Jewish religious leaders who would help any pregnant person get a referral for a safe abortion. Now, in the 1960s, it was known that disproportionately poor women and women of color were dying from unsafe abortions. And they could track this from hospital admittance records. They could tell, based on who was being admitted to an incomplete or a septic abortion, who was being impacted by self-induced or unsafe procedures. So folks with access to money and connections, though, could find a friendly physician or a friendly psychologist to write the right doctor's note and get what was called a therapeutic abortion. And those folks were predominantly white, middle, and upper class women. But the clergy in this secret underground interfaith network were fearless. They were not satisfied with therapeutic abortions. No, they dreamed a grassroots effort led by religious leaders to make it safe. Now, these clergy, running their churches and their synagogues, visited these abortion providers, checked them out, talked to the doctors, ensured they were safe, met with people seeking abortions, accompanied them, provided spiritual care, help with funding, transportation, and then interviewed folks after the procedure to make sure the person they went to was truly safe and full of dignity. And if a provider was not, they were off the referral list. Even when abortion became legal in New York, there was an initial legal effort to require pregnant people to have to seek a psychologist and receive mandatory counseling from either clergy or a psychologist. And these clergy were fiercely opposed to that. We don't want the job. They were fiercely opposed to that. Why? Because they felt that no further burden was necessary, and that when a pregnant person shows up, they have the dignity of their complicated decision. They need no other complication. Now, by 1973, the year Roe v. Wade happened, those 21 religious leaders grew to the size of 1,400 nationwide, helping hundreds and hundreds of people access a safe abortion. And although we don't have specific numbers because it was underground, it is understood that many of those were Unitarian Universalist ministers. This is part of our history. In 1963, we were the first ever religious denomination to proclaim publicly our support of abortion. Unitarian Universalists in Texas were part of the amicus brief to the Supreme Court that led to Roe versus Wade. In 1987, we did another statement of support at our General Assembly, reaffirming our belief that a right to contraception and access to abortion was part of our constitutional rights. And in 2016, we expanded our understanding at General Assembly again with a statement of conscience. And that statement of conscience said, actually, we believe in full reproductive justice. And that was a move away from the narrow scope of just that one choice of whether you had access to that one possible procedure to a widened understanding of, did you have access to health care, to food, to shelter? Do you have economic justice? Do you have racial justice? Because those factors will tell you if you have choice at all. So in 2016, we expanded our understanding to say we are broader than just one choice. We want choicefulness and dignity for all. And this brings us to our present. Today, we and the United Church of Christ have the leading nationally recognized comprehensive sexuality education program, OWL. Some of you are trained facilitators of it. And it's Unitarian Universalists right now in Texas who are the plaintiffs suing their state. This is our history, and this is our present. How are we so damn sure, though? Can you believe this? Since 1963, our association has been out there in the front saying we believe this emphatically to be true. And 90% roughly of Unitarian Universalists feel this way, which means there are few of you in this congregation right now who may not feel connected to what I'm saying. That is perfectly okay, and I honor you. But here we are. Where does inherent worth and dignity come from? Where does inherent worth and dignity even come from? That is a complicated religious question for all of you. Our team, our community here is held by a common set of beliefs beyond which you have the right of your conscience and your free and responsible search for truth and meaning to determine the details. But what bonds us is a belief that every being has inherent worth and dignity. Where does it come from? Where does it come from? Our tradition that holds us together gives us some spaces to hang our reproductive justice hat on. We say that human beings have inherent worth and dignity, our first principle, which means that we believe people's bodies and their choices matter to us, that they have a say over what happens to their bodies and to their choice to reproduce or not. We believe in the twin powers of conscience and agency. We also believe that human relatedness must move us on that horizon. We've talked about this. To be a liberal tradition is not necessarily about our politics. It's our sense that on the horizon, there's a change that draws us forward. And if it is towards more justice, more healing, and more equity, it is our duty to find our way to move towards it. And it means that we have eyes of tenderness and mercy that we're looking exactly for where justice does not exist. And we ask ourselves, what could make it so? We believe in a vision of a whole and just world community and a way of being alive together that simply doesn't even exist yet. We have this phrase, a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all, and we dream of it even though we don't live in it. And we know that when you take options away and you make it so that the only option is an illegal or safe option, and if you know that disproportionately the people who will be impacted by that are already at the point of inequity, then we haven't created more justice. When we say we imagine a world in which bodies have been restricted of their options, in which they are restricted of healthcare or social care or racial equity or economic equity, we aren't supporting life. That idea of restricting our choices as increasing life is a very narrow understanding of what life is. And if we want life, it means we want to give lives of dignity and choice. And that is a value to hold, especially on Mother's Day. It's the value of nurturance. What is Mother's Day if not nurturance? And nurturance as an act is the opposite of violence and coercion. It's about recognizing the dignity and the worth and the value of another being such that they grow and flourish in their choices, not yours. It is about strengthening a web of life by making more options, not fewer, creating more access, more resources, and more equity. So I would say UUs are very pro-life, by which I mean the whole goddamn web of life, the whole existence of its complicated being that includes each of us and all of us in complicated calculations of what would bring more life into the world. And that means we see dignity in every being. We see complexity of their experiences. We care about the way their experience is different from ours. And we see that this web of life is broken and fragmented and needs tending. The web of life does not tend itself. We tend it. So the whole damn web of life needs our attention. And choosing whether or not to have a child when you are pregnant is a complicated calculation about your dignity, your choices, and your place in the web of life. It is a choicefulness about your capacity, your sense of well-being. It involves asking what you want, but also what do you have the capacity to do from your place in your body and in your web of relationships. And it also means being seen as a body capable of making complex, dignified decisions, and those decisions mattering. Now, I've had 2 abortions in my life. Both involved complicated calculations about what capacity I actually had to tend the possibility in front of me. And each time I confronted my finitude. And I am someone for whom the majority of my identities, my race, my ability, my class, my sexuality, makes most forms of healthcare completely accessible to me in some way, and yet still it was complicated. The second time I became pregnant, shockingly, without planning to be, was after the birth of Joy. having experienced a choiceful pregnancy with joy, and the birth of my daughter and the subsequent social and physical and psychological and financial and familial energy that it takes to raise a human being, it was even more clear to me upon realizing the choice ahead that I did not have the capacity right now for a second. So I began to figure out how to get an abortion in Arizona. Arizona is recognized as nationwide as a pro-life, pro-natural death leader. Its oldest abortion law, 1864, is still on the books. It prohibits performing an abortion unless it's required to save the woman's life, but it calls for a minimum of 2 years in prison for the provider. The only reason this doesn't exist now is because it's blocked by Roe v. Wade. It's a trigger law, which means when Roe v. Wade is gone, this one is in effect. More recent laws limit abortions to prior to 15 weeks. So first, you have to make an appointment. There are 9 clinics in all of Arizona that provide an abortion, 2 of which are in Tucson. That means for all of southern Arizona, the location you must get to is Tucson. For me, the first appointment would not be available for up to 2 more weeks. So at 5 weeks pregnant, waiting 2 weeks would put me past most of the recent bans. Second, this first appointment is not to provide you an abortion. It is a required commitment from Arizona to provide you an ultrasound, to invite you to listen to a fetal heartbeat, and to receive state-mandated counseling. The counseling session is a state-mandated script that would functionally discourage you from seeking an abortion by emphasizing the risk you're taking, describing the physiological characteristics of the child, and then showing you services if you might choose a pregnancy instead. Then you must wait 24 more hours for a second appointment before you receive your medication. And you have to pay for it. Public health care in Arizona does not pay for abortions. So if you can find the money for yourself, a pill or medical-based abortion will exceed $800. Note, if I were in a different economic situation, I would have had to taken time off of work, multiple days in fact, and find childcare while I did this. And if I did not live in Tucson, I would have had to find transportation and lodging for both days. And if I was not married or partnered with someone who I was in a good relationship with, I would have had to find friends and family who would be willing to help me if they supported me at all. And none of that takes into account navigating the real emotional, physical experience one experiences when they make any heavy medical decision, let alone this one. The ending of the story is important because it tells you the power of privilege and access, and it places me right in the lineage of white women getting therapeutic abortions. I began calling clinics in California. The first clinic I called had an opening in 2 days. In fact, because I was an out-of-state pregnant person seeking health care due to obstacles in my state, donors in Planned Parenthood in California were now paying for pregnant people who had to cross state lines for their abortions. I would have an appointment in 2 days for free, with my family taking care of Drew and Joy, while my workplace had already given me a vacation. It was on a vacation. And I did cross a picket line of protesters in California, but I got health care. I hope you hear the incredibly specific nature of my story, that a person of a particular race with particular economic access and job security with a particular type of partnership can fight their way to some choice. But that is what it took, an intersection of privileges, identities, and access, and it was still a nightmare. So what do you all do with that? MVUU, you are at an interesting crossroads as an organization. You have battled your own obstacles to the point where you are a stable, resourced, organized presence in a battleground state. You can be a sanctuary. There are grassroots organizations in Tucson that help women in Tucson find abortions and funding. You could be aligned with them. You could be a place for solidarity. People are hungry to belong to organizations that fight for human dignity and choicefulness. You can be that place in Northwest Tucson. Here is what we also know. Arizona is a place where your organizing actually matters. You live in a place where your vote and your organizing with UU Jazz as a partner could actually be a leader in the upcoming elections ahead of us, including in Maricopa. It's important to watch Maricopa because many women travel to Phoenix to access their abortion and reproductive services. For those of you who saw days prior to Roe v. Wade and who knew how to organize then, you are needed back. You are needed back. Now, when I came back to Tucson for my follow-up appointment at Planned Parenthood, I did not cross a picket line. There was a family outside, 12 people of every generation, accompanying a young woman into the clinic past the bulletproof glass. They could not enter because it was legally not safe to do so. So they made a party in the parking lot for the daughter that they had just sent in. Now, when I followed that daughter, we were there for the same reason. And I couldn't help but notice her text messages blowing up. And her phone kept ringing and vibrating with emojis and hearts for the people who were outside for her. And I couldn't help but tell her that I could tell she was really supported. And she told me what she was there for. And she said, "They love me. They love me." And so I end there. This glimpse of real love, real aliveness, held in the work we still have to do together. But holding just that, maybe happy Mother's Day. May we make it so.
I don't have much to say, but I think we need to stand when we sing this.
invite you to put your hands out in that kind of church way where you feel like you're touching someone, but you're not touching someone. Ann Bowling's doing it really well. And just look around at the life around you. May each of you online, at home, and here in this building know yourselves worthy of dignity and choicefulness. And may in this community you find that constantly mirrored back to you. Go in peace. Amen.